South Korea is cracking down on lithium-ion batteries. The FTC makes your spying TV company pay, and a dress that knows when you're lying. All that and a whole lot more coming up on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today, episode 1699, recorded Monday, February 6th, 2017.
This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by Tracker, a coin-sized tracking device that pairs with your smartphone and keeps you from losing your most valued possessions. Visit thetracker.com right now. Enter the promo code TNT and you'll receive a free Tracker Bravo with any purchase.
And by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. When it comes to the big decision of choosing a mortgage lender, work with one that has your best interest in mind. Use Rocket Mortgage for a transparent, trustworthy home loan process that's completely online at quickenloans.com/TNT.
And by Blue Apron, the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country. See what's on the menu this week and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/TNT. Welcome to Tech News Today. This is a show where we tell you what you need to know about technology. Today, I'm Megan Maroney.
I'm Jason Howell. I should show off my watch too. Was that it?
Your watch? That was some hair was stuck in my mouth.
I thought that was like one of those things you do when you're wearing a
smartwatch.
The
Asus Smart.
I need to fix this.
No, but yes, we both have smartwatches on. Should try and make us smarter about the news.
Yeah. Instead, the news just bugs us all the time. It says, "Look at me now. Look at me now. I'm really important. I'm on your wrist."
Exactly.
That's kind of how I feel about smartwatches right now. I'm sorry, I'm a little jaded.
And that's how we are. We're looking at listen to us. Listen to us.
That's
We're
right.
talking about the news. Listen to Jason.
In fact, listen to me right now because I've got something to tell you, and it's about Google. Google was dealt a blow when a U.S. magistrate ruled that the company is required to hand over email data that's stored on its servers abroad. They have to hand that over to the FBI in this case. Google believed that a related appeals court ruling last month that said Microsoft was not required to share user data that's stored in Ireland would act as precedent for this case. But as it turns out, the judge in this case broke from that precedent to say that the transfer of those emails from a foreign server was not, in fact, seizure in this case. Google says it has servers all over the world. It's really difficult to know where the data resides. So this is a bummer for us.
Yeah, it seemed like that was a good precedent, and I wish that they had followed it. I'm not really sure if they say Google's algorithm transfers user data from one data center to another, so that means that somehow that is not private and doesn't qualify as a seizure of data. So it is complicated. I mean, it is no longer just like the mail in your mailbox, what you can look at and can't look at, and they just keep making. I mean, there has to be. I thought that we could depend on precedent because that's all we had, but apparently not.
Well, I'm sure this will go up to appeal. I think even Google says they plan to appeal this. They say we will continue to push back on overbroad warrants. I mean, this has privacy advocates pretty concerned. They say that the law that this revolves around, it's a 1986 federal law called the Stored Communications Act. They say that's horribly outdated. You can think about the technology landscape of 1986 and where we are today and have to imagine that they're different worlds entirely. And I don't know. I think what you're saying is right on. It's a catch-22, I think, for technology companies because Silicon Valley, all these companies want to do all this stuff with data to make their services more dynamic, make them smarter. All this kind of stuff involves intense amounts of data, obviously hitting servers all over the world, yet they want to protect that data. And obviously the feds want that information, want the data for whatever reason, for prosecution, that sort of stuff. So it puts the technology companies into a difficult position, I think. Which side do they lean towards more?
If they're going to use a privacy law from 1986, then I'm going to start curling my bangs up and down and using an entire bottle of hairspray on them like I did in 1986. And nobody wants that.
I don't know. It might. I'm just saying it might make a comeback. The craziest things from the crazy old fads from 20 years ago. They have their way of coming back. So you never know.
Well, I don't want it in privacy or
Oh, okay.
my banks.
All right.
So, in response to the Note 7 fiery kerfuffle, the South Korean government says they will tighten battery regulations. A few weeks ago, Samsung announced that after significant research, they learned that battery flaws cause the phones to catch fire, and they promised tougher internal safeguards. Now the South Korean Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Energy will also be involved by instituting new certification measures to require safety of lithium-ion batteries based on new technology in the production process. The ministry will also conduct regular safety inspections. So this is good news for the fiery
Good
Note
news
8.
for consumers.
I mean, I
Hopefully
would-
not ending up with exploding batteries.
Yes, I mean, I would hope that they learned by now, but yeah, more safeguards. That would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of these, basically they say that they're supporting all of this expanded testing. One of them was an X-ray test that, by the way, would have caught at least one of the two issues of the Note 7 battery. All that kind of takes more time and everything, but it's also costly. So this is them kind of putting, basically saying this is an important priority for the creation of this technology. It's just really too bad we don't have a new standard for batteries. There are a number of reasons, more and more, why we need that. And I know it's not the easiest thing in the world to solve, because otherwise we would probably have it by now rolled out wide scale. Because I mean, there are just a number of reasons that the batteries in our devices, they're fallible, they're potentially explosive depending on the manufacturing process. They don't last as long as people expect or hope for them to. So I don't know what this means for the long-term development of new battery technology, but I hope we get there someday.
Well, I
we
think
need
that's
to.
part of it, is us pushing so hard for the longer battery, the thinner battery.
Right.
And so they, it's the consumer that wants it. And so it does seem like they're pushing it through as fast as possible, sometimes, ignoring safety as they might have here.
Yeah, what is the result of that? And by the way, I think we need more kerfuffle.
Yes.
Megan.
Fiery kerfuffle.
Yeah, as long as that fiery kerfuffle has nothing to do with me. But I like the word kerfuffle. What can I say? The FTC says that Vizio will pay $2.2 million in a settlement agreement surrounding its collection of consumer viewing data involving 11 million of their TVs. That data was collected without its consumers' knowledge. And as such, Vizio is now required to obtain explicit consent for what data it collects and how it plans to share that data. And I mean, in the grand scheme of things, $2.2 million doesn't sound like a whole lot, but I think this is meant to be kind of a signal, to other TV makers as well. I mean, they were tracking viewer data, all the data that through cable, broadband, set-top box, DVD, OTA, also demographics, like a broad scope of demographics, sex, age, income, marital status, household value, homeowner, yes, no, all that type of stuff, and basically collecting this without the user knowing, and then selling it to ad agencies. So, not good.
No, well, Vizio doesn't really admit fault. They just said, there needs to be a policy in place. There wasn't, because this is a new world where your TV knows everything about you. So this is really about disclosure and consent. So they probably still want to continue to collect this data.
Right.
And perhaps even sell it, but they need to disclose that, and they need to get our consent first. And, it's crazy because this was smart interactivity that was the feature, so it would be making suggestions. And so I don't know where people thought they were getting this info. Like
Right.
if your TV is saying like, hey, you watch a lot of Stranger Things, you might also like Westworld. Like, it was, so it was really just, they could have, it's very easy to get disclosure and consent. Most people just give consent. So.
Right. I mean, it probably just needs to be one of those things where at least the first time you power up the TV and you sign into whatever your Vizio account is or however it's managed, it gives you that little checkbox that says, by doing so, you agree to blah, blah, blah. And that's probably what you'll see here. Yeah, I mean, probably, for folks that watch or listen to this show, for us, it'd be very easy for us to infer that if all of this smart stuff is happening on the back end, it's because it has access to that type of stuff. And are we okay with that? But I think a lot of people just don't really think about it. They just think, oh, that's useful, or oh, it's not.
Yeah. Right. And there, I mean, I do think that some government regulation into this, government stepping in and saying, yeah, you need to have disclosure and people need to give consent. That's good.
Right.
And their data privacy program is going to be reviewed twice a year. That's also part of the scheme.
What I wonder is maybe, because I feel like smart TVs just always suck. Like for the most part, they're never really that great. So disable it. Don't have your TV be smart and get your preferred set-top box, whatever that happens to be, and do that. Live in that world, because I don't even we need to upgrade our TV at some point in the near future, or rather I really want to. It's like 10 years old at this point. And so I know the next TV that we end up with is going to have smart features in it. I just don't know if I'll be inclined to use them because they always seem to suck so bad. And if there's this aspect where all of this information is being gathered and generated and sold to ad networks, or at least the potential of it is on the back end, then I don't know. Maybe I'll just stick with the set-top box and be okay with it.
Yeah, I don't have my TV is also dumb, and I'm perfectly happy with it. I mean, I have Apple TV, which I don't know if you consider that a set-top box. You mean a cable set-top box?
I would consider an Apple TV to be a set-top box for sure.
Yeah, and it's exactly as smart as I need it to be.
Yeah, exactly. Good enough.
Facebook, Google, and news organizations are taking on fake news in France. It's election season in France and across Europe, and the social media companies want to take a greater role in helping their users fact-check stories to avoid being influenced by election propaganda in the form of fake stories. Cross-Check is a new verification project launched by Google News Lab and the nonprofit First Draft News. It'll start by employing Google Trends to scan for potentially false news stories. Facebook's CrowdTangle will do the same. Now, similar tools have been rolled out in the U.S. and Germany over the last few months. So this is a big problem, and technology companies are admitting now to having the possibility, having the ability to help users. So they're going to have a combination of journalists and also artificial intelligence. And yeah, we're beyond the hands-off approach for them, I think. You too can be a cross-checker. You can follow @crosscheck on Twitter if you want to help out.
Yeah, I find this interesting. So the reporting process that was kind of detailed in the article, right? A link is recognized as being false by a user, so they report it as false. The link is sent to a ruling group that's comprised of 8 media companies who, if 2 of those media companies confirm that it's false and they have to provide some sort of supporting links, then the content is flagged as disputed, and then users will then see the warning anytime they try and attempt to share it. Ads are also blocked. Running ads against that content at that point would also be blocked. So kind of an interesting experiment. You get like you said, there's a lot more sites that are kind of playing around with this. They're compiling their own database lists of what they consider to be reliable sources, reliable sites. Part of me feels a little like everybody has their own list of what's valid and what's invalid. And so it still ends up being kind of a challenge, I think.
Well, I mean, I think the phrase "fake news" is so useless at this point.
Try not to use it, to be honest.
I mean, it doesn't mean anything. Yeah. It means nothing. And I mean, it could mean propaganda, and it could mean something you disagree with.
Right.
And those two things are very different. And it's dangerous to call one when it's the other. It could be it could be link bait, which is all. I wish we had a better word for it. Maybe. Burke, we can take the Burke cam. He might have the solution.
Do you have the solution? How about getting news from journalists who cross-check news? Okay. That's kind of, that's kind of what we're talking about here, right? I mean, it's publishers, it's other media companies that are cross-checking the news.
Yeah, I mean, are you talking about the individual getting your own news? I mean, there's also a bit of your own, individual responsibility in this as well, which is another thing. So,
I guess what I'm saying, because I think that this needs to happen. I feel more comfortable. I feel more confident that this is happening, whereas it wasn't before, and I'm happy that there are changes being made. I guess what I'm saying is that perspective, it's such a challenging kind of universe in this regard right now online, because perspective is so important. Everybody has a different perspective of what is truthful, what is accurate and inaccurate. And so it all really depends on whether the people that are on Facebook trust the 8 media companies that have been chosen to rule whether something is is truthful or not. I'm not saying that what they rule is right or wrong. I'm just saying that there's kind of a lot of leeway right now between what people agree is right and what is wrong. And I don't know how much that helps it. But I'm happy that they're doing it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there's also, I like the term fact checking, and I believe that all journalists should do that.
That's a good thing.
And
when one is a journalist, fact checking is definitely good.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, but I mean, what you just said, it's like, oh, well, everyone has a different idea of what truth is. Like,
that's the world we're in right now, though. I'm just saying, as messed up as that is, I don't know.
Are you saying there are alternative facts?
I'm saying there are plenty of people that believe that there are alternative facts, and tools like this, even if they're vetted, it still won't matter for them.
Right. Okay. So even if you can't do everything, that doesn't mean you should do nothing.
No, I'm definitely not saying do nothing.
Okay.
No, I like this. I'm just saying, isn't it a bummer? That's all I'm really saying.
Yeah. Okay, I agree.
Okay, we're gonna pivot a little bit to something lighter. Google and fashion maker Ivy Revel have partnered to merge the real world with technology to come up with, quote, the world's first data dress. Android users can install an app called Coded Couture that analyzes the data and habits of the user throughout the day, which is then compiled and translated into fashion pieces with a digital signature that influences things like the materials, the colors, shapes, and even embellishments to create an original look. So basically, this is tapping into something on Android that was announced at last year's Google I/O called the Awareness API, which essentially it's a part of the OS that is able to track not only location, but also kind of activity states. Are you driving versus are you riding a bike, or whatever the case may be. And using this API, it can essentially analyze a number of different ways that people are using their phone throughout the course of the week, and then come up with kind of like a unique signature for your clothes.
I wish this were fake news.
Why? You don't like this?
I don't want a dress that knows all my data. I don't think I really fully understand it. So it's supposed to so it knows that I'm sexy and confident, and gives me a dress that goes way down to further than I want it to go.
I don't know. I guess that depends on how it determines your actions throughout the course of the week. Where you go and all that.
Okay. I guess, yeah.
I mean, really, I think it's just coming up with, as you can see, it kind of looks like a map. It reminds me of, to a certain degree, and I'm sure it's way more than this, but it reminds me of these smart cases that you can get for some Android phones. You can get it through Google, where it like takes a portion of the map, the Google map, whatever you think, and makes that into the piece of art by just kind of, blowing it up basically and putting it on your case. Kind of feels like that, but I think there's a little bit more to it than that. It's actually using this data to plot out charts and paths and everything to come up with a unique look.
Well, the Android app is not available
until
next year. Because I looked for it. I was like, I'm going to download this app. I'm going to bring it to the Android app arena where I'm going to be tomorrow.
That would be a good one too.
Yeah, but it's not available yet. I don't know. I mean, I guess I want to dress. I want to choose my own dress.
Okay.
I don't want
this is
data.
Like make your own dress.
It is. So it is making my own dress. Okay.
Kind of.
Okay. And do I walk around with the things about me on my clothes where someone could then use that to violate my privacy?
I don't think so. I mean, basically, based on what they were showing, I mean, it's like a black dress with some I don't know. I don't even know if they're crystals or if they're Swarovski or whatever, kind of tracing a little unique path throughout the clothes. I don't think it's actually kind of like you couldn't hold up a camera to it and go, all right, I just got your social security number.
Okay. Got it.
I'm guessing that would be a very powerful dress if that was possible.
Okay.
But I don't think that's going to happen.
All right. So there's no lie detectors inside the dress?
Well, they've had exhibits that they've done in the past to show other ways that you can integrate kind of technology into fashion. Okay. And that is one thing that they've done. They've had clothes that had embedded like lie detectors and speech recognition.
So like if I were on a date or something with someone and they said something and my dress could be like, he's lying to you.
Yeah, maybe something along those lines. They also had at an exhibit something called a BioWare shrug, which was like, I guess a shrug is a thing. Do you know what a shrug is?
I know what a shrug is.
Okay,
Do you know what a shrug is?
I didn't know what a shrug is.
Do you know now?
It's kind of like is it like a scarf, like a big
It's
fluffy
like an
scarf?
over the shoulder, like where you would shrug in your
okay.
shrugging area.
Okay. So it's a BioWare shrug, and it's made of, and it has a bunch of like feathers on it, and an embedded heart monitor, so that the feathers ruffle when you're agitated.
Oh, this whole list of technology seems like a bunch of guys in a room like, we need to make technology for chicks. What do chicks want?
Well, there you go. I don't think Megan's going to be getting a BioWare shrug anytime soon.
Not anytime soon.
All right, fine.
After the break, we will talk about how the U.S. is about to exclude the next generation of immigrant entrepreneurs. But first, let's take a minute to thank Tracker, the sponsor of this episode. We're all used to losing our possessions. Admit it. You lose your stuff. I do too. There is no shame in it. Newsweek reports that the average American wastes 55 minutes a day looking for things they own but cannot find. Tracker makes losing things a thing of the past, and I will tell you how to get one for free. The Tracker Bravo locates misplaced keys, wallets, luggage, instruments, bicycles, electronic devices, even your dog or cat in just seconds. The coin-sized device is constructed with anodized aluminum for the thinnest, most durable tracking. You can attach it to your items with the key loop or the adhesive. Tracker is enabled by Bluetooth LE, so the battery will last you up to a year. You can add a laser engraved message to each Tracker Bravo, like return or pet info. And you can now personalize your tracker with a custom printed image. It's not a sticker, it's custom printed on there. You can pair Tracker to your iOS or your Android device and find its precise location with the tap of a button. It's that easy. Your phone can track up to 10 devices at once, and you can customize two-way separation alerts so you're notified before you leave your item behind. If you lose your phone, press the button on the tracker, and your phone will ring even if it's on silent. With over 3.5 million devices shipped, Tracker has the largest crowd GPS network in the world, so your lost item shows up on a map even if it's miles away. Now, if you lose your item, the Tracker app records its last known location on a map. Then, when another Tracker user comes within a 100-foot range of your item, you'll receive a GPS update of where your item is. Go to thetracker.com and never lose your possessions again. Plus, just for our audience, if you enter promo code TNT, you'll get a free Tracker Bravo with your order. That's TheTracker.com, promo code TNT to get your free Tracker Bravo today. Nearly 100 companies, including Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, Uber, Twitter, and Netflix, have filed an amicus brief opposing Trump's immigration ban. Whether or not you believe the ban is immoral or unconstitutional, it will surely have an effect on Silicon Valley. Joining us to talk about the ban and the changes to the HB1 visa policy is Michael Coren from Quartz. Welcome, Michael.
Hey, thank you.
So first, who are some of the big names in Silicon Valley who are immigrants?
Well, actually, there's quite a few. They tend to have founded a number of companies. So Uber, Tesla, Intel, Elon Musk is from South Africa, and I think about almost $500 million startups that are now private are actually founded by immigrants.
So yeah, this is it's an amazing and it's going to have a huge effect. You say even rumors of the changes to the program, to the HB1 visa program, or even to the immigration ban have made tech stocks tank. What do we know already about the draft of the changes to the HB1 visa policy?
Well, everything's up for grabs. Right now, the preliminary language has talked about actually reducing the number of visas that would be available, removing any spousal privileges to work, increasing the salary caps or floors. You have to pay up to $100,000 or more dollars. Some of the more extreme versions actually required a PhD and 10 years of experience, which would essentially kill the visa for most people. There have been a couple bipartisan bills that weren't more executive orders that were actually far more supportive. They did try to say they'll give preference to people who paid more, and I think a lot of tech companies would be okay with that. But from the White House, most of the both the suggestions and then the clauses have been pretty restrictive.
So what do you say to people who argue that tech companies have been abusing this HB1 visa, that they've been abusing it to just hire cheaper labor? What do you say to people who make that argument?
Well, I think they're right, but only in a very limited situation. It's definitely not the case for everyone. And so you have a few cases where I think we saw this with Disney. We saw this even with several tech companies, but we haven't seen this as the norm for every company. There's quite a few that hire directly really talented workers, and then they're able to sort of go from an H-1B to something that's more permanent, like a green card, and then start their own companies, although that's a very long and a difficult process. So it's definitely not as simple as this is a way to lower U.S. wages. I think on net, there's quite a bit of benefits, if not certainly for the country as a whole, and that most of the suggestions that have come out of this, the abuse investigations, have been about fixing that particular aspect of it.
Now, the list, the list of companies that are involved with this amicus brief is pretty intense. I mean, it's right around 100 different companies. Mm-hmm. Big name companies. There's some notable absentees from the list. Amazon, for one, Oracle, IBM. Do we have any idea why? If there was this huge unifying call with all these companies, why those weren't on the list?
So we don't know for sure, but Amazon has come out and said they're going to file their own, I think, separately in a different case. So I'm not quite sure on that. On IBM and Oracle tends not to get involved with these at all. They're probably one of the most conservative companies in the space. IBM has been advising Trump. I believe Gina Coletti is on one of has either had an informal relationship or something more formal, and they've been also very, very conservative. So it's not clear that they're willing to actually get involved the way that Silicon Valley tech companies are, most likely because their workforce is putting less pressure, honestly, on the executives.
Got it.
So in your piece, you talk about, you quote Sam Altman, who tweeted that the tech community is powerful. And we've seen them donate, really open their wallets and donate to the ACLU. And the ACLU obviously has been doing a lot of the real work. I mean, this is where a lot of this has to be when we're talking about an executive order. It has to be, people have to take this to court, and the ACLU has been really stepping up. So obviously donations will help that. But do you see them as being powerful in other ways in this fight?
So they're in a really interesting position. I think the executives of these major tech companies are for the first time facing somewhat of a revolt from their employees, and in a coordinated way. So they actually do have quite a bit of power. But they're also in a rock and a hard place. They are trying not to essentially piss off the White House and most of I think what Trump plans to do that might be in their favor. And at the same time, their workforce is enraged. At least there are thousands and thousands of workers who are willing to walk off the job if they don't see that their companies are standing up for the values that they said they are, that they said they support. So while I think they do have a lot of power in terms of influence, jobs, and then access to the White House, I also think that they don't have a lot of room to maneuver.
And so you also wrote about the International Entrepreneurs Rule. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So this was an Obama-era rule that was made, and it was a workaround because Congress wasn't able to pass comprehensive immigration reform. And the goal was, how do we get the best entrepreneurs who are willing to start companies in the United States to come, found their company, and then make more jobs? Pretty simple. And the workaround they came up with was something called a parole. So they gave the Department of Homeland Security the ability to give sort of discretionary access to these entrepreneurs to come to the United States. That was introduced in the Federal Register late last year. And for procedural reasons, it's not a done deal. And it now looks like it won't happen. Obviously, it was a big push for Silicon Valley to get that through, and it looks like it may not happen.
And what about the digital service, the startup-inspired digital service? That was something also that doesn't look, the future of that doesn't look promising either. Can you talk a little bit about that?
We may be surprised by that. So the U.S. Digital Service is probably one of the bright spots we've seen in the federal government in the last 4 to 8 years. It came out of the healthcare.gov disaster, and they pulled in a bunch of really talented people from Google and Facebook and other companies. They put Humpty Dumpty back together again. That site has worked quite well since then. And from that initiative they started the U.S. Digital Service, which is a mixture of teams that can go in any agency and either work like a SWAT team where they fix tech problems really quickly, or they could work on a longer-term agency basis. We're actually seeing a fair amount of surprisingly bipartisan support, especially from the Republican side. But the executive orders that Trump has issued, the hiring freeze, may actually put the kibosh on them, because they actually have to hire people constantly since they're on shorter term contracts. So unless that's lifted and there's a strong Republican support for USDS, it may be a risk.
Is there anything to look forward to in terms of, are there any bright spots in this? You say we might be surprised. That was some optimism there, but is there anything, any good news?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, what I'm hearing is, at least on the Republican side from the USDS, is that they haven't, that their support internally, it just hasn't made its way up to the top, and that those decisions, or at least the implication that groups like that might see a reduction, could actually turn around and be quite positive. The immigration story is changing every day. And there's been such a pushback from Silicon Valley, and even, I think, from the business community at large, that you may see a reversal or a much finer tailoring of immigration restriction, so that you'll see, at least on the sort of skilled technical immigration side, a more liberal policy. But I'm not willing to make any predictions on any of this.
So do you think that, I guess you said you wouldn't predict, but do you think there's possibility that the HB1 visa policy might follow the same way, that it might be reformed instead of just eliminated?
Yeah. I think the H-1B visa program actually has potential if there are certain bipartisan proposals are adopted. I think it has the potential to be reformed, and if not expanded, at least to be preserved and the potential for abuse reduced. And so I've seen in the last 2 weeks a ton of legislative activity that's basically put those bills on the table. They're now sitting in Congress waiting for White House input. And once the White House gives a green light to something and it looks like it might pass, then I think there's definitely potential for a positive outcome. Elon Musk is on the president's advisory board, and he's made that one of his priorities. So yeah, I think if there were areas to be hopeful about, that could be one of them.
Well, thank you so much. Michael J. Coren is a reporter at Quartz, and you report on startups and a little bit of politics when it revolves around technology. What else is your beat?
So I cover the culture of Silicon Valley, startups, technology, venture, and in the last 2 months, I've become much more of a politics and tech reporter. So I spent the last 2 weeks in DC, and I'm now reporting on all sorts of intersections between, I guess, the future of politics and democracy and technology.
Well, thank you so much. MJ Coren on Twitter, MJ_Coren on Twitter to follow Michael's work. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Michael.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Take care.
All right, we got some feedback. Neil writes, I just listened to episode 1695 where you discussed briefly how chatbots seem to emulate the typing behavior before they respond. This might not actually be any emulation at all. These bots have to do a lot behind the scenes. Once Facebook or Amazon, Google, etc. receives the message from the user, it has to send that message out to the company providing the bot. Once that company's API receives the request, it has to run natural language processing on the message and parse out what the user really wants, which is a pretty non-trivial task. After that, it has to do an action with that task and return it all back to the user through Facebook's or Amazon, etc.'s API. While this whole process shouldn't take a whole lot of time if it's coded well and running on powerful servers, it does take some time. And once you factor in network latency, etc., it can add up to be a couple of seconds before you get a response. All that said, The typing animation that's shown is much more natural, is a much more natural way to show the user something's happening than, say, a spinning wheel of death or nothing at all. And yeah, that's a really great point through and through, but especially there at the very end. As users, when we do something and then we see nothing at all whatsoever, it's a little disconcerting because you don't know if it's frozen or if you threw it out in the wild and you're never going to see it again. So I think that little bit of indication is at least comforting as a user to know that something's happening.
Mm-hmm. I have to admit that in my month with Android, I have really enjoyed those little colorful dots bouncing around while you're waiting for something. Yeah, it's much better than the spinning rainbow wheel of death.
Yeah, I don't like seeing the spinning rainbow wheel of death. Do you get that? But you don't get that on iOS,
on the Mac.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I haven't seen it on the iOS side yet. Up next, flying cars become even more of a reality. But first, let's take a minute to thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. They're the sponsor of this episode. We've all been through the process. Well, some of us have been through the process of getting a mortgage, getting a new home. Some of us are even going through that process right now, dare I say. It's not easy, is it?
No.
There's just a lot to consider when you're going through this process. A lot of information to be gathered, and I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed. So you need some help along the way. And when it comes to that big decision of choosing a mortgage lender that's going to hopefully make it a little bit easier for you, it's important to work with someone you can trust, who has your best interest in mind. With Rocket Mortgage, you'll get a transparent online process that gives you the confidence to make an informed decision. So you won't waste time searching through stacks of paperwork, gathering all that information, all that kind of stuff. With Rocket Mortgage, you can securely share your financial information to get a mortgage approval in minutes. You can even do things like play around with the numbers. You can adjust the rate and length of your loan in real time to make sure that you get the mortgage solution that's right for your situation. Whether you're looking to buy a home or refinance your existing mortgage, you can actually lift the burden of getting a home loan with Rocket Mortgage, and it makes everything just a whole lot easier. Skip the bank, skip the waiting, and go completely online at quickenloans.com/TNT. That's quickenloans.com/TNT. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states. NMLS consumeraccess.org, number 3030. And we thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans for their support. If your litmus test for living in the future is the active development of flying cars, well, consider yourself futurefied. Joining us to talk about Uber's latest move towards flying cars is Brian Clark, the one and only Brian Clark from The Next Web. How's it going, Brian?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing awesome. Great to have you here.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to be back. It's been a while.
I know. What the heck is wrong with us?
Well, we usually communicated via iMessage, and I haven't had my iPhone for a month, so that's what I blame.
I have.
That's true.
So it's my fault.
How bad do you hate it? Let's just be honest. Scale of 1 to 10.
How bad do I hate the Android phone? Hate is 2. I dislike it strongly.
Okay.
Strong.
That's not to say Android phones are bad, but it's a very personal preference that I just can't handle.
Yeah.
Well, then you don't ever have to use my Android phone, Brian.
I was kind of hoping I'd get to.
No, I'm sorry. It comes back to me tomorrow. Hey, we're here to talk a little bit about Uber and flying cars, although you corrected me a little bit and said not flying cars, they're taxis. But let's back up a little bit. Uber hired a former NASA researcher for its Uber Elevate project. First of all, what do we know about this new hire and what he can bring to the project?
Well, he was a former aircraft engineer at NASA, so he's got legitimate chops in this segment. And he kind of pioneered the idea that aircraft could be smaller, lighter, and fully electric and still carry people around. So rather than having to open your phone, grab the Uber app, and get a car, now you can open the Uber app and get a flying drone of sorts that can take you down the road to get your pumpkin spice latte.
That is so important in this day and age. Okay, so you say drone. Are these cars, they taxis, they planes?
Uber was very quick within seconds to point out that this is not a car.
Okay.
I got an email, it seems like before I hit the publish button, that said that this was indeed a taxi, and they didn't want me to give anyone the idea that they are building a flying car, like that you could park in your driveway. And it's a taxi. And it's more like a drone, really. I mean, it's not really a car, so I guess that was a bad choice of words on my part. A drone would be far more accurate.
Okay. I think everybody's going with car because everybody wants to live in the Jetsons' future, you know?
I think so too. I can't look at that and not think flying car.
So do Moore's vision and Uber's vision on flying cars and flying drones, whatever you want to call them, taxi drones,
Sure.
I don't even know what to call them anymore. Do they converge based on what we've heard about Uber Elevate in the past? Is this like a match made in heaven, would you say?
It seems to be. I mean, the two are very closely aligned with their ideas so far. But we're not really going to know until they run through these really significant legislative hurdles that they're going to face. Because it's all really going to come down to how they alter the strategy and what they come up with next. And I guess you never really know how well you work together based on the initial idea. It's going to be based on many revisions and what they come up with.
Sure.
So what stands between me and my flying taxi?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of physics that we can talk about. Well, for starters, they have to plow through just a ton of 3-letter agencies in the government, like the FAA, FCC, DOT. And then once they're done with that, if that ever actually happens, then they're going to have to go and start answering questions to members of Congress, most likely, about the safety implications of this and how they can ensure the public that this is fine and you can actually get into a flying taxi and not fall to your death. And then from there, you're probably going to see a small test area in a less dense city, maybe in Idaho. That was for you, Jason.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you. Happy that you know this.
Yeah. I mean, this isn't a technology that we're close to seeing. We're, in my estimation, a decade out at least.
Wow, a decade out. Now, it's my understanding that Moore, he had, at least according to the one of the other articles that I read, the Bloomberg article had mentioned that he was a year out of being eligible for retirement from NASA. And also many of his pension benefits apparently walking away from that because he believes that Uber is the right company and now is the right time. But you're saying 10 years. I mean, that's quite a thing to walk away from. Does this kind of give you hope that Uber is doing it right? They've got the right person for the job, obviously.
It gives me hope that Uber gave him a sweet enough deal to make it worth it.
Yeah.
And let me clarify just for a second. When I say it's a decade out, the technology to do this is already there. Like this isn't a technology problem. This is very much a legislative problem.
Right.
And as we've seen with self-driving cars, that's not a quick process, and it's not something we can just speed through. And it could actually lead to a company like this testing overseas for the first time. Like we're losing Hyperloop due to this legislative battle. Autonomous cars, we're seeing self-driving semi-trucks go to Europe. I mean, this really could be kind of the next big tech battle we lose to the legislative process. But to the question, I think it shows a lot that he's willing to join the company and risk that much to build something like this. So it seems very much like his heart's in it and he believes this is something that could succeed.
Mm-hmm.
So you brought up physics. I have some more questions about this. So what?
I don't know anything about physics.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. I'm so glad we have you here.
Okay.
What about VTOL? That's vertical takeoff and landing. That's what we're talking about, the technology here, as opposed to having to speed up and take off. And is that why you would liken it to a drone, or is it actually is it pilotless?
Well, I'm not sure on which route that Uber's going to have to go on this one. We've seen, not just from Uber, but from other companies like Airbus, Explorer Air, Volcopter, eHang at CES. I don't know if you got to see that drone.
Mm-hmm. The one that's going to carry organs around?
Yeah, or something, yeah. I mean, we've seen a lot of different concepts, and they're not anywhere near actually picking one, in my opinion. But if you look at them, they're much closer to drones. I mean, they use GPS. They can fly completely autonomously. They don't necessarily need a pilot. Someone closer to maybe like an air traffic controller would be what we'd be looking at. But yeah, it's much closer to a drone. I mean, we really don't know. It could look like a wood-paneled station wagon with wheels that flies, for all we know, when it comes down to it.
As long as like the wheels go from normal to, they rotate. That's what
That was the mental picture I had, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
Good. I'm happy
more,
we're on the same page.
I'm thinking more like the Magic School Bus kind of flying,
With flames shooting out the back. Mm-hmm. Just don't be standing back there.
Right.
Any of the kids that are about to board the school bus. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that might happen too. Are there any other companies out there that are quite as like making this type of aggressive step towards developing this type of fleet as Uber?
Airbus actually said they could have one out by the end of this year,
that's right.
which might be ambitious. But again, like Explorer, Volcopter, EHang, I mean, there are a lot of companies that say they're doing something like this, but I think few are anywhere further than drawing it out on a cocktail napkin like we all do.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like it's like a land grab at this point, just making sure that everybody knows that we're working on something and we'll be there when this becomes a thing 5-10 years down the line.
Yep.
And we have the NASA guy. So there you go.
They do have the NASA guy, so there's that.
There is that. That's a big get. Brian Clark from thenextweb.com. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys, and not on a Friday this time. That was amazing.
We play around with things here. We're like, you know what? It's Monday, but okay, this time.
Always be testing.
All right. Cool. Thanks, Brian.
All right, guys.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
TNT's fan of the day is Lee Adama, if that is your real name.
Oh, it totally is.
Probably not. On Twitter, who sent us this picture showing us how that dongle dangles.
Ooh, it's a picture of the title screen. I realized when I wrote that could be interpreted differently. It's not weird. It's just a big screen TV. That's all.
Yes. Thank you, Lee Adama. I loved your work on Battlestar Galactica. Show us how you watch or listen to TNT. Record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup. Post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook. Use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we will find it. After the break, great game yesterday, huh?
Oh, yeah.
And when I say game, I mean the drones in Lady Gaga's halftime show. But first, let's take a minute to thank Blue Apron, the sponsor of this episode. Blue Apron's mission is to make incredible home cooking accessible to everyone while supporting a more sustainable food system, setting the highest standards for ingredients, and building a community of home chefs. Blue Apron delivers seasonal recipes along with fresh, high-quality ingredients to make delicious home-cooked meals for less than $10 per person. Every meal comes with a step-by-step, easy-to-follow recipe card and pre-portioned ingredients that can be prepared in 40 minutes or less. Blue Apron sets the highest quality standards for their community of over 150 local farms, fisheries, and ranchers across the United States. Seafood is sustainably sourced under the standards developed in partnership with the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch. Beef, chicken, and pork come from responsibly raised animals. Produce is sourced from farms that practice regenerative farming. Because Blue Apron ships the exact amount of each ingredient required for a recipe, they are reducing food waste. Their freshness guarantee promises that every ingredient in your delivery arrives ready to cook, or they will make it right. Blue Apron delivers to 99% of the continental U.S. There's no weekly commitment, so you only get deliveries when you want them. Customize your recipes every week based on your dietary preference. Choose from a variety of new recipes each week, or let Blue Apron's culinary team surprise you. Recipes are not repeated within a year, so you will never get bored. Try one of these meals that you've in your Blue Apron box: cashew chicken stir fry with tango mandarins and jasmine rice roasted pork with apple, walnut, and farro salad. Or crispy barramundi with quinoa and roasted carrot salad. Udon noodle soup with miso and soft-boiled eggs. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/TNT. You'll love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron. Don't wait. Go to blueapron.com/TNT. Blue Apron, a better way to cook. I did not watch much of the game last night, but I did do my patriotic duty and tune into the halftime show where Lady Gaga performed with 300 red, white, and blue drones. Lady Gaga's acrobatics were impressive, but how about those drones? They had to be each coded individually to form into an American flag, whereas Lady Gaga, she was just born that way.
Ah! It's true. Oh, you were sitting on that the whole episode.
I was sitting on it. Yep. I loved those drones. They were not live though.
Neither was her jumping from the roof.
What?
Yeah, her actually doing the jumping thing, that was all pre-recorded. I looked it up.
Are you sure? Did you cross-check it, or are you sure you weren't reading fake news?
No, I need to cross-check it with 2 sources with links and stuff. No, as far as I know, the part with her on top of the roof was the pre-recorded part along with the drones in the background, and then the second she jumps, then she was already hanging on a wire. In there.
Oh, that's crazy.
Still, A, she jumped from a roof, and B, more importantly, 300 drones.
Kylo Ren, he was live with his third quarter ad. Did you see that? The live
I didn't see
Snickers
that.
ad?
No.
It was amazing. Not the real Kylo Ren.
Was it
of
live?
course.
It was a live ad?
Yeah, it was a live ad. That was their thing. Yeah, and like things were falling over.
How did I miss
Adam
that one?
Driver, that's his real name. He's not really Kylo Ren. I don't know. Maybe he is. You don't know.
Maybe he is.
This could be fake news.
Yeah.
They had to get a special waiver from the FAA to fly that high.
Yeah. It was, what was it, 700 feet. And I guess normally you're not supposed to do that. I don't know if that's, I'm guessing normally you can't do that with the drone. But these are special drones, Intel's Shooting Star drones. They're quadcopters, LED lights that, obviously on board that can pretty much do any color that you need, which makes them perfect for American flags in the sky. They weigh 280 grams, which is less than a volleyball. And they fly for up to 20 minutes. So,
and also they are if one of them fails, they have a backup one that will just get in there.
rise
I know.
Rise to power.
Like I wish we had that sometimes. When I can't think of what I'm going to say, then there would be a drone that would come up and just say.
when you can't think of what to say, here I am.
Backup drone.
Meanwhile, it's accompanied with a loud. So that might not be the best solution in the world.
Yeah.
So what is this? Brian, what are we looking at? This 500 drones is the next step.
Well, they've done
this
that.
Yeah, this is something that already happened, but the development of the drones.
Those are cool looking.
Yeah, they're at like Disney or something. Disney World.
So 300 is like nothing.
No.
It's like whatever.
It's pretty cool software, though. And typically, if you buy like a new drone that has restrictions and stuff, you're not supposed to fly it over. I think it's 400 feet is the ceiling. So
wow. The FAA actually also bans drones anywhere within 34.5 miles of the stadium on game day. So that's a big reason why they couldn't do this. Couldn't do it live. But man, I would love to be there with that happening, although it also looks frightening at the same time.
Yeah, wait until they all start motion tracking you and following you around, chasing you down.
Yeah, an army of 500 drones, LED drones following you around.
And they would use your data dress in order to follow you around. That's
it would
the
be
future.
Blinking and everything. Wow. Very cool stuff. Cool technology. Next year, I expect to see 700 drones, or I will not be impressed. That's how fast things roll here. TNT records live every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, midnight UTC at twit.tv/live. You can be part of the show by emailing us at tnt@twit.tv. You can leave us a short voicemail at 260-TNT-SHOW and find us on Twitter. We're at Tech News Today TV.
And if you want to see us in person, please do. We love to have a live audience. Email tickets@twit.tv. And if you want to tweet at me, I am at Megan Maroney.
And I am Jason Howell on Twitter. Thanks to Brian, also with a Y, for switching the show today. Thanks to Burke for helping out in the studio and occasionally writing things down on a piece of paper, which we may or may not read. Sorry if we don't. Kevin for editing the show. And thanks to you for talking tech with us today. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye, everybody.